So the next few months are pretty poised to be busy in regards to games, at least for what I'm interested in. Naturally, we have COD and Modern Warfare 3 rumored to be coming out in early November. Starfield is something that I want to dabble in with content that may be a resurgence to the second channel. You can find that link below if you guys want to check it out. But in the more immediate future, or hopefully immediate future, XDefiant is still on the horizon. We've had closed play sessions, a closed beta, and an open beta session, but now we wait for the unannounced launch date, and while we do so, if you're like me, you're looking for just any bit of news you can to scratch that itch and anticipation. Today we're going to be running down a few more things that Mark Rubin, executive producer at Ubisoft, ended up bringing up to the discussion table and letting you know what you need to. So as we go along, drop your thoughts down below. Are you looking forward to anything in particular with XDefiant, the weaponry, the maps? Are you looking to grinding levels, a new camo grind, mastery, whatever the case? Drop your thoughts down below on what you're looking forward to seeing in XDefiant going forward. If you enjoyed the video, you'll find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things XDefiant as we gear up for what's hopefully a release in the near future. I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, check out my friends over at G Fuel for 30% off your order with code ESPRESSO on things like the tubs of hype sauce, MS melon, and hibiscus tea, as well as starter packs in the month of July, but more on that a little later. For now, let's jump into it. First, one thing that was discussed here is one part objective truth, but also that is a part that's speculative in nature, come what we can expect to see with the launch of the game. That being camo challenges, or maybe more accurately, camo unlocks. But if you're like me, or honestly at this point, I'd say it's pretty common as a COD fan to go after camo challenges. While it might not be the centerpiece of what we discuss and look forward to when we think about XDefiant, it's certainly something that will end up being a nice bonus and something to look towards no less. Of course, we can all look forward to that classic arcade shooter style gameplay, the weaponry on offer, the maps, the modes, all that kind of stuff. But again, camos are kind of secondary. However, I'm always going to go for them. Mark Rubin, executive producer at Ubisoft, chimed in on this topic a little bit recently, where he was asked, will there be any camo challenges in the full game? I'm already excited for prestige mode, to which he replied, yes, even though we are a free-to-play game and rely on microtransactions, we want to always have cool free content to grind for. Now, there's a few things to break down from that statement. Firstly, and the more focal point here for this discussion at least, is the confirmation of cool free content to grind for. That's kind of always seemed like the general sentiment here from what I could gather with XDefiant as a whole. I mean, one thing that stood out to me from the beginning was who puts a free battle pass with items that would transfer to later play sessions and ultimately the full game in a closed beta? The only ones I can think of in recent recollection would be like the finals. So not a whole lot are putting emphasis on playtime and grinding the game in such an early state. And with Rubin's prior mentions of how things look to be handled content-wise, it never really seemed to me like you'd be sacrificing earnable aspects in favor of MTX. Though, as with all free-to-play, it'll be there to some degree, and we'll touch on that in a second. Now, while we have some camos coming, we don't exactly know, again, to what degree that will be, but surprisingly, some camos were actually seen in the earlier play sessions in that closed beta. When progression was introduced, so like only through like a portion of the beta, because if you remember, they had issues with stats and unlocks tracking properly, so they just unlocked everything after a day or two and then re-implemented things like progression towards the end of the beta. But during that time when progression was enabled, there was actually a way to end up seeing camos where we ended up seeing 3 skins, interestingly not mastery items, but 3 skins in the way of a bronze camo at weapon level 50, a silver weapon camo at weapon level 100, and then a gold weapon camo at weapon level 300. So that was cool to see, and honestly, I'd like to see that carry over and continue. Now, I'm really curious to see what that mastery will entail. Obviously, probably some kind of challenges to prove your mastery of that, maybe headshots, long shots, and sort of the blueprint that Call of Duty has set up in the past or other games have set up in the past as well. But I'd love to see those in tandem with just simply progression-based camo unlocks as well. My guess is that we will see a little bit more than what we saw in the beta if it does come over 1-to-1, because we saw camos unlocked at 50, 100, and 300. That's kind of a weird interval there with it, right? Like, I would kind of think that we'd get one every 50 levels, perhaps, so that you'd have a couple in between there. 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and then gold at 300. But we'll have to wait and see. I also do remember, though, XDefiant Hub tweeting about some skins that were actually seen in the practice course, and I think that those would make some really cool camos and skin designs. Fingers crossed it would be camos, but we'll have to wait and see. One thing that I did find out recently is how camos versus blueprints are developed in Call of Duty, and I'm sure from a design perspective, it's a little tougher than we may anticipate, because you do need a genuine pattern for a camo, but for a blueprint where there's like set attachments, that's something that you can just take that build and use the build entirely as a canvas in and of itself. So it gives a little bit more agency and freedom to the designer making the camo for that and that skin for a blueprint. But I mean, I'd love to see XDefiant have some of these camos like you see on screen, but actually be camos that you can apply to other weapons. So we'll have to see how that all works out. But secondly, from that tweet as well was the confirmation of some sort of reliance on MTX. Now, that's something that I'm not a huge fan of what we've seen happen with MTX in the last 7-ish years or so within Call of Duty, but that's almost to be expected with a free-to-play game. I personally think it's different when you don't have a barrier of entry to actually play the game versus trying to sell $20 bundles on a game that's $60 to $70 at its base. And listen, I'd love to argue that, hey, give the players everything they want and for free. And to a degree, that's kind of what we're getting and seeing unfold with XDefiant. I mean, we have a game that is reminiscent of classic Call of Duties for free here, but at the end of the day, all games are a business, especially a live service game like this. Ubisoft needs to generate revenues to keep paying the team developing the game, to keep marketing the game, and everything that goes into the daily operations. Otherwise, this passion project that we're all excited for, it seems like, ceases to exist. So we're gonna see a shop. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of how it will be handled. And fingers crossed, we see it user-friendly. Like, I'm totally okay with having the option to pay a few bucks for a universal camo for all weapons individually, not bundled together with a bunch of stuff that I won't ever touch, but instead, if I could buy a camo for $2, $3, $4 or something like that, like reminiscent of the classic days of Black Ops 2 and COD Ghost, I'd be okay with that. That's totally fine with me. But if we can only buy things in bundles, that's where I'm not going to be a fan. But anyways, not to ramble too much on that, that's cool and all, but when's the game launching? Ruben reiterated right now, while there's no hard date, he assures players that they're currently in a bug fix mode so they can end up getting everything ready for another round of submissions to get the game certified to go actually out and be playable. They're currently in one at the moment, but they're doing more ironing out here. So while there is no ETA, they're at that approval process here for it. So it could take a couple of weeks, a couple of months. It's just a matter of how things go in that pipeline. So fingers crossed we'll see this launch sooner rather than later. That target still being late summer, which could be any time between now until September 23rd if we're going to the end of summer literally. So we've got some time to work with before you have to consider any sort of a late launch or anything like that, but I'm there with you, man. I'd love for this to come out as soon as possible. That said, what was cool was that Ruben also mentioned some post-launch considerations, one of which was theater mode. When asked if it would be there, Ruben said, "I wish. A theater mode is a big deal work-wise and we have to do a few other tasks before I could even get into that, but I'm a fan of the idea, so maybe in the future." And also, a fully customizable HUD is something that Mark Rubin and the team at XDefiant want to actually implement as well, where he was asked, "I wonder if you'll be able to change the size of the minimap. I personally have impaired vision and find it difficult to see the minimap in COD and even more Battlefield 2042. I understand if you don't have time to solve it for release, but can you fix it post?" To which he answered saying, "Definitely. Not something that we can do for launch, but at some point post-launch, I actually want to add a fully customizable HUD so you can move elements around and possibly resize as well. A lot of work, so we'll see when it can be done." But that's pretty cool whenever you consider customization on each individual player's perspective. I think that'd be awesome. You could custom tailor the size of that kill feed, that mini map, the ammo counters and things like that. One thing that I would love to see, and just for maybe what you even see in the thumbnails, we do a lot of spot healing for the thumbnails. I take a screenshot of actually in game and then get rid of all the HUD elements. I would love to be able to decrease some of the things like the operator's abilities and ultimates and the charge rates on that, because that's always right in the view of the gun on my thumbnails and I have to get creative in how I remove that. So if I could end up, say, just having that smaller or moving it to a different location, that'd make my life so much easier. But that's stuff that we can consider seeing here, maybe post-launch, on top of already a host of other things that have already been considered for after launch. That's what I love, honestly, about XDefiant, is that they're taking this feedback, and even if it might not be feasible, they're like, okay, we can look into that at least and report back. So that's pretty cool if you ask me. But that's where we're at here at this most recent update for XDefiant and some of the the details here along the developmental process and getting the game ready for launch. So that is where we're going to call it. Now, before we wrap everything up, make sure to check out my friends over at G Fuel with code Espresso to get 30% off your entire order of things like hype sauce, hibiscus tea, and MS melon tubs, as well as starter kits in the month of July. If you want to grab a restock or try something out for the very first time, now's a great time to do so. 30% off with code Espresso, but only if you want. Linked below if you'd like to check it out. But that said, that's what we're going to call it now. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of this? Do you like the sound of these camo challenges? Do you hope that we see some of what we saw within the closed beta sessions and the practice courses in terms of camos and that kind of stuff? Do you hope we see that come to the full game? Do you hope we see something else beyond that? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, you find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things XDefiant, Modern Warfare 3, and other FPS content here on the channel. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.